How you doing, Terry? Pete? Okay, Jason, we have you in here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just bringing my earbuds back on.
Okay, fantastic. I'm just going to cycle mine.
All right. I'll go without him.
See if this is going to work. Okay, can you hear me, Meow?
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Chat, how's the sound? Is it loud and clear? Phil, good to see you, buddy. Phil, how's the sound? Mac, how's the sound? Mike and Seth. Okay, Grant, thanks. Okay, Jason, you just want to say something? Literally
I'm Jason.
something.
I'm Medusa Edge Weapon Systems and Blood Hill Combat Club. Can everybody hear me?
I got you, Jason. Chat, everything's good?
How you doing, Mike?
Okay, we got 14 or 15 people in here. Someone asked where he was. You're sitting in on an interview for Jason. He's one of the chief instructors of the Medusa Edge weapon system as it was developed by Mike and Seth Raymond, who I believe are also here. Let's get started with what's the origin story, Jason, for you?
So,
before you got into Medusa or any of that, where do we start?
So I started off with judo at about 10, 11 years old. That was in an after-school program. And when funds ran out for that, my parents signed me up for karate in a local Okinawan school. It was the Shorin-ryu. And the instructor there was very old school. We did a lot of body conditioning drills and Hojo Wando. I stayed there for a number of years.
What is Hojo Wando? What is that?
Hojo Wando, it's like supplementary exercises done to target specific body groups.
So
and
that's like a muscle strength and conditioning thing.
Exactly.
That's like a smashing forearms. Yep. What? Okay.
Everything from weightlifting to body conditioning, like smashing the forearms together or using like a tetsutaba or an iron brush on your shins. And a lot of that's carried over to what I do as an adult.
Okay.
So I went from that. I left for a short while, came back a few years after I cleared up my head, and I ran the fighting program there for a while, and then I left due to politics. He was starting to slow down on the hardcore stuff and bringing in more families, more children. So I separated myself from the school, and which hindsight being 2020, kind of foolish. I could have stayed behind and helped them out, but that's neither here nor there. I went from that to MMA for a very brief period of time. I trained in a local gym, nobody of any regard, and he opened me up to submission wrestling, which was, he was a sixth, it's not sixth. He was a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he was a certified catch instructor. So he combined BJJ and catch like you normally would, because they're essentially the same thing. And he exposed us to Western boxing and Thai boxing. And from there, I decided I didn't want to train. I didn't want to compete. I didn't want to go to tournaments, but I wanted to pursue self-protection still. And that's where I kind of rediscovered the World War II stuff. I found the World War II stuff in my break during karate in my late teens and regarded it as being too simple to work. That foolish mind of a child. being what it is. I completely disregarded it and ended up going back to it just a number of years later, knowing that's exactly what I wanted. You know, that whole time it was sitting there with me, and I just ignored it. So for the past 12 or 13 years, I've been solely training gutter fighting. So World War II techniques, rough and tumble fighting, and for the past
is that the Steyr stuff? Is that the Fendo? Is that Fairbairn Sykes?
Yeah.
Is that
So
Applegate?
my initial exposure to the World War II stuff was Kelly McCann's Jim Grover Combatives 1, 2, 3 set.
Fantastic. Outstanding.
Yeah.
He
Perfect.
himself, wonderful human being.
Yep.
Material is exceptional, as well as him being a great dude. Yeah, for sure.
So that's where a majority of my influence comes from, is Kelly's material. You know, he's taken the World War II stuff and made it even more effective. He's streamlined it. You know, he's changed the way Fairbairn delivered a chin jab a specific way. You know, Kelly does it in a completely different way that I think is much more effective. You know, he's taking these old methods and reworking them, making them even more effective than they were.
So just to kind of step back for a sec, when you're talking about catch, you're talking about catch as catch can wrestling, the scientific wrestling.
Yeah.
It's like Billy Robinson, Carl Gotch, Farmer Burns, those fellas.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I quite enjoy it myself. The emphasis on top game control, it's very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you brought up Kelly McCann.
Yep.
And so I had a chance to actually train with Kelly in person. He got brought up to Edmonton, and obviously I have been watching his stuff since I was, well, not old enough to be watching his stuff.
Right.
And so one of the things that he had said that I thought was interesting, when he talked when he was first exposed to some of the World War II stuff, and you know, you go back to probably the 90s, I guess it was. There's a bit of a circuit, and he had told some of his guys, he said, "Listen, what you guys are doing will not stand up to the basics of boxing." And,
exactly.
And one of the things that I was impressed with is, like, a lot of people don't realize Kelly's got well over 200 some boxing matches.
Yep.
As he grew up in Boston, so you could, I mean, between the firefighters league, the youth leagues, the police league, you could be fighting every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So he had said that he had gone through and kind of streamlined it so that it would actually stand up to the rigors of punches and bunches, which is very good. And a lot of people that are doing the World War II stuff, quite frankly, would the stuff that they're doing just wouldn't stand up. So how is it that you have gone through and streamlined what you're doing for the gutter fighting? Because a chin jab is great, but are you adding setups? What is it that you're adding instead of the "you don't know my mentality, bro"?
Right. No. So,
thing?
like I said, Kelly has been a big influence on me. So I'm right there with him in combining the combat sports with the combatives. You're not going to throw an edge of hand strike and then throw another edge of hand strike and then throw a cup hand blow. You're going to get off that preemptive strike, and if that preemptive strike fails, you're going to be boxing this guy. You're not going to be throwing these Fairbairn 5, you know. You're going to be fighting. You're going to be throwing punches, throwing knees, throwing elbows. The preemptive stuff is gone at that point. You need to train, if not closed hand or fistic combatives, you need to at least learn how to throw proper palm strikes. You know, throw a palm strike like a hook or an uppercut. It's a lot better than just relying on those preemptive World War II strikes.
Well, I mean, if you can be firstest with the mostest, that's good. But as Thomas Holton points out, that every failed ambush is a duel, so you should probably be aware of it, right?
Exactly.
So, are you going through and looking at blending in some of the old school kind of pre-Marquis to Queensberg boxing and that type of stuff that you're doing, kind of before the mufflers or the gloves came in? So you're not relying heavily on busting the knuckles up, alternate targeting like the mark and things like that?
Yeah, a lot of it's soft, soft tissue striking, liver shots, kidney hooks. I don't, even though I do Makiwara training, I don't want to be throwing punches to the top of somebody's head. All they have to do is cover up, and I'm breaking my hand. That's why, I suggest the palm hook. You get somebody in like that, you're not going to break your palm. You're not going to shatter the radius of your ulna hitting somebody in the top of the head. Throwing a punch, you can easily get a boxer's fracture or fracture your knuckle, fracture the metacarpal.
Lee, are you familiar with Lee Morrison? I think there's one of the Urban Combatives fellows in here.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, so Lee's big move du jour, or his favorite, is actually taking a palm strike, and he fires it just above the eyebrows to just rock the head back. And he's getting flash knockouts on guys that way. And I mean, working as a doorman, I can assume that if he's done it once, he's done it 100 times.
Right.
You go through and you look at that palm strike, transferring the energy to a hard target, opposed to glancing off, kind of lets it sink in like a hollow point.
Yep.
Awesome. And so within the World War II stuff that you're doing, are you, almost every single fight winds up turning into a grappling match of some description, at least a tussle. So are you integrating some of the judo and Greco stuff, and just kind of adding some grabbing the head like a bowling ball and goozle pipe stuff? Yeah. In addition to just good technique.
We go over, basic judo. I did the Gracie Combatives program as a refresher for a little while before the pandemic. Perfect. So I'm factoring in some of that stuff. But a lot of it's, I'm going through the combat judo program with Baron Shepard. So I'm going to be trying to bring in some of that material as well.
Is that similar to stuff that John Saylor was doing? Saylor was out on the West Coast.
Okay. Yeah, it's in the same wheelhouse.
For sure.
Very, dirty.
The Barn of Truth.
Yeah.
Nice. Sorry, you were saying? Bringing in some of Baron Shepard stuff.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to be factoring in as far as it goes to like the grappling. Awesome. stand up judo, stand up grappling, BJJ. From my experience, again, I don't hold any rank in BJJ, but I've had my exposure.
Excellent.
So whatever I can share with somebody, I want to share with them.
Excellent. And what is your exposure to knife work before we start talking about Medusa? What knife systems have you been involved with prior to Medusa?
So I was not officially involved with any knife system. I trained NICOM with Fred Bauer shortly. I was exposed to that curriculum. I dabbled in Libre for a very little bit. It wasn't for me. I'm 6'7", 300 pounds. I'm more
6'7" and 300 pounds is surprisingly lean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then so I'm more of an overwhelming, not so much puppet mastering. I don't want to control the opponent. I want to just overwhelm them with violence and solve the problem. Use my natural abilities.
Okay. So the stuff that you're teaching, does it work for somebody that is, under the mere 6 foot?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've worked with women who are in domestic violence situations, to give them the basics, teach them what their natural weapons are, teach them where there are areas of opportunities are, and you can make these things work. It just, it's all about, it's all about intent and mindset, but there's some truth in that. You have to be in the right mindset to commit acts of violence on somebody, whether it's done for a justifiable reason or not. Even the people that just snap, they're in that right mindset. They're able to do that. They may not have had a violent um, impulse in their life, but they'll get to that point where they can be in that mindset.
That's a fair statement. You need both the skill and the will, but the will is sometimes more important than the skill.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned Nikon. Nikon is a Kali derivative. It's an FMA derivative, or is it something else?
Bob Casper's knife system.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was running around with Kelly. Sting of the Scorpion is one of his works.
Yes, it is.
If I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then you had said you'd been involved with Libre, in which I've had a chance to train with Scott Babb and some of those guys as well.
Yeah. So I dabbled with Libre for a little bit. I got the, I got the original Street Edge series, messed around with that for a while, and then I got every derivative of Libre that he released after that, up until the Journeyman package. And then I had enough of it,
Sure.
And I sold off everything I had because I didn't, the Nikon was working for me. It was streamlined, 4 thrust.
So how is the Nikon different than Libre? Libre, for everyone that doesn't know, it's Scott Babb's system, and it is very similar to JKD trapping sets, but done with a predominantly reverse grip or scythe grip knife.
Yeah.
And then, there's some other stuff that's added, some low line stuff and things of that nature as well. So how does Nikon differ from that?
So Nikon is a Western method. It's more straightforward. There are angles, but it's more direct. You're only moving in on angles. So if you're stabbing or thrusting to the neck with your right hand, you step off to the left. You're moving in the direction of the strike at all times, and you're keeping everything within this small box.
Like this?
Right.
Like this? Okay.
Yeah. It makes sense. But Libre, to me, if I had been exposed to Pachiti Tercia prior to Libre, and I didn't, it didn't feel right to me. And then when I started trying, to delve into the Libre, I got the same exact feeling that I had gotten from the Pachiti Tercia. It just wasn't for me, But the Western stuff, the more direct, the more linear, that speaks to me. Put 'Em Down, Take 'Em Out by Don Pentecost. Fantastic book on Western knife fighting, and it's just straight and direct. No complicated footwork, no patterns, no cutting techniques, nothing like that. Just straight up drills. You do what you do, you get in, you get out, and you move on to the next session.
So did the Nikon stuff use basic boxing footwork to drive the knife home?
The best way I would compare it is like a combat shuffle.
Okay.
You step off with the front foot, drag the back foot. Step. If you're moving backwards, you step up with the back foot slightly, drag the front foot. Very. There's a lot of intent in the motion.
Okay. So more similarly derived like fencing or something like that?
Right. Okay. Exactly. It was heavily influenced by John Stiers. John Stiers was a fencer. They had Portada.
I had a chance to do quite a bit of FMA, and the bulk of it was Pachiti Tercia. And for me, I have a bunch of nerve damage from when I grew up. So the thing that I actually really enjoyed about Pachiti was the footwork. But you could do footwork for a year straight and not quite do it right.
Right.
And so that's definitely not for everyone. So you did a little bit of the Western stuff, a little bit of stripped down FMA stuff, which is similar to what the Libre is. Yeah. So how is it coming to Medusa? How is it that Medusa comes into the picture? Let's start with how you even became involved. Why Medusa? Why did you start? And then we'll get into what it is.
So Medusa kind of just fell into my lap. I've known Mike Raymond for about a decade now. We originally met through a mutual friend, and he got me into lock picking at the time. And
Does he still run his lock picking tools?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think once Medusa picked up, that's it. It's been Medusa. But
Sure.
We've known each other, we've talked, we've shared ideas over the years, and then maybe 3 years ago, he came to me with the idea that he and Seth and a couple of guys were running upstate with this Medusa thing, and he basically gave me the outline of what they're doing, what the techniques are, and he wanted me to experiment with it. So I ran a couple of drills, and I was like, maybe this is going to replace my NICOM stuff. Maybe this is going to replace any other sort of knife expression I had, just because of the basic simplicity of it. There's really no thought. It's just action. So Mike and Seth, Mike's a big knife guy, big knife system guy, trained forever. And he was getting tired of how complicated the systems were getting. And he wanted to just offer something that was simple, something somebody could learn over the span of a weekend even, rather than having to train for years before they felt the confidence in their abilities. You have these people that they're training, and it's great that they're training, but they're working a bob, and they're stabbing in the same places, and they're hitting in the same places, expecting the target to be there for the next strike. There's no reaction. They're not taking into account, if I stab somebody here, they're going to move. My next strike isn't always going to be here. If I stab somebody in the liver, they're going to bend over. My next stab is probably going to be down, not to the throat, And seeing that, and, hearing the way Mike was working with his guys, I just knew it was the right thing. And it was what I felt people really needed. So I asked Mike if I could write just a quick and dirty manual for the system, just for the guys who were involved in it. And he gave me that permission. And then after that, I took it a step further, and I asked him if I could offer it to the public, because I really believed in Medusa. I still do believe in Medusa. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if I didn't, It's beautifully simplistic. That's Medusa. Medusa used to be a beautiful woman before she was cursed. All men chased after her. The beauty of Medusa, the system, is its simplicity. After Medusa was turned into what we know her as, that's the ugliness of Medusa, that face, that hair. The violence, the aftermath of Medusa is what's ugly. So people ask where Medusa is and where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of love. It's coming from a place of beauty. And you need to have that in you in order to commit the ugly, in order to commit the violence, for a righteous reason. There are people out there that commit violence for violence sake. They're predators. They're out there doing this. That's their livelihood. The good people that commit violence out of love.
Well, it's definitely worth coming to terms with that before you have to. And
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of chatter about the use of violence as a tool, and it winds up being romanticized.
Yep.
Usually by people that haven't done it, unfortunately. And what they don't understand is every time you willingly hurt somebody, every time you willingly put those skills to use, you lose a piece of your soul. You become a little less human, right? For everything that you do, it costs you. It's not free. So it's good that you guys come to terms with that. So how is it that Medusa differs from something like Nikon or something like Libre, as far as Libre having a series of sets and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Are we looking at Medusa's, kind of a grab sewing machine type of get her done sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if we're being realistic,
mm-hmm.
You can only stick a knife in somebody so many ways. You're going to, the pointy end goes in the other guy. I'm sorry, I got lost. What was the question?
So how is it that Medusa differs from something like Libre? For people that aren't exposed to Libre, Libre has essentially a series of sets, a lot like a JKD trapping set, right? I throw this in, you interrupt that, I come back, I clear, you put up a barrier, I bring it back, and I come around, stuff like that. And so it's very much like a series of kind of JKD kind of trapping sets. How is it that Medusa differs from that? Is it just grab hold of the guy, pump him like a sewing machine, get her done?
If that's what the situation calls for, yes. We advocate working with resistive targets, if not a live partner, because we don't have sets like that. We don't run specific drills. We don't run combinations. I don't believe combinations have a place in combatives. Boxing and MMA, Lethwig, bare knuckle boxing, those combat sports have places for combinations, because how many times have we seen boxers throw a three-piece and they come up short on two of the punches? We can't afford that mistake if our lives are on the line. We need to train our minds to react to our targets' reactions. Like I was saying about the people working on the dummies and not expecting them to move in real life. If I go in somebody, I shock them. If I, finger dart to the eye or a yoke hand to the throat, they're going to react to that. I won't be able to say, throw a yoke hand, go for an underhook, stab to zone 3, zone 2, zone 3. Because he may not react that way. He may not bend over. He may not let you get the underhook. You may have to fight for the underhook. You might have to go for an overhook. You need to be able to work dynamically and think on your feet. It's fine to drill combinations, but you need to be able to go a step beyond and think in the now. Almost as it's happening. You're going to see those openings, and you want to get to that opening before he knows there's an opening. It's like, so Medusa is based on a triangle. It's shock, latch, and stab. We don't just latch and stab. You grab somebody, they know a fight's coming. If I punch you in the throat and then grab you in the tie clinch and start jigging you in the stomach, chances are you don't know I'm stabbing you until I'm stabbing you. You don't know there's a fight there, and that's how we want it. We don't want a duel. I'm not, we don't start our drills with our knives out. You will never see somebody post a video training Medusa starting with their knife out, unless they're doing against an armed adversary. We always start unarmed, because if we can end a violent altercation with shock, that's where we want to end it. We want to drop them and get the fuck out of there.
So what is shock?
So shock is any strike to the eyes, the whole of the neck, focusing on the throat and the groin. If I knee you in the groin and that drops you to your knees and I can get away without having to stab you, that's what I want to do. I don't want to stab somebody. I don't want to latch to somebody. I don't even want to hit somebody, but if I have to, and I hit you and I drop you, I'm getting out of there. The fight's over. I'm 42 years old. I'm not looking to get into brawls in parking lots. And the same thing, if I'm dealing with a drunk and I get him in the latch and he wants to fight me, I'm not going to stab him if I can control him, get him into a full Nelson and sit him down. You have these guys out there that are training like they're actually going to go out there and assault people. And that should be the furthest thing from your training. You should train for who you are, not who you want to be.
Well, and if who you want to be is going out and assaulting people,
right.
It's maybe there's some introspection that's required, right?
Oh, certainly.
Sure. When I did Bikini, we would always make the joke of that there was these murder sets, and it was essentially like, okay, but what has gotten us? Hey, Shadow, what's good? What has got us to the point at which we are now doing this, and what's got us to the point where we're, drawing pictures or doing this thing with people, like on people with our knife. Why is that happening? So one of the things I'd like to ask about is you talk about you don't use combinations. So you don't use combinations at all, or you don't use target-specific combinations? Because using something like high-low-high and low-high-low, just going through and getting used to changing your position, I mean, it's a combination, I guess, but it's going to at least help you throw punches and bunches or whatever the equivalent that with. Someone think about something funny to call that with a knife. But you're going to be able to go through and change target and put more holes faster if you're doing that. So you're not doing any type of attribute development, and you're just doing a lot of flow work with perfunctory resistance.
We do high-low-high and low-high-low. So we when you're working with a live partner, that's going to come naturally if they're reacting. If you're making contact, you're going to end up going low-high-low naturally due to your opponent's reactions. They're going to tuck their elbows. They're going to cover up their ribs. You're going to want to get under there, or you're going to want to get over. They're going to cover up. They're going to shell. You're going to want to get behind the guard. So yeah, we do high-low-high and low-high-low. But I'm not saying that I'm going to teach you, backhand to the groin, underhook, stab to the femoral, stab to the kidney, stab to the side of the neck. Because that might not be there. But, if you throw that shot, go for the hook, and you're on the inside, you have his whole abdominal area and the groin open. So just go to work,
So the counter argument that I would offer to that is that, so a lot of the Cali training is all based on flow work and seeing those openings and going through in those, seeing those openings, finding it, there's a lot of flow work, and those strikes and targets present themselves, and you see them more and more because you practice them. A lot of times it is done in a very emotionally sterile environment where it's like we're playing this tappy-tappy type of game and not shaking the shit out of somebody as we're doing it, which, I mean, could probably be added and considerably up the value. So I would say that a lot of that stuff from an FMA standpoint is being done for attribute development. I would say that for Libre, it's not necessarily that someone's going to bust out the 5-pack on somebody, but that they are developing attributes that will carry over. But it sounds like you're also doing that, right? You're just making it a little more free flow. Like you're doing your low, high, low, high, low, high, your middle, bottom, top, and you're shaking the shit out of each other, correct?
Yep.
So you are working those combinations, you are developing those attributes, you're just not looking to create 57 to 56.
Yeah, we're not having people memorize combinations. We're provided they can show the ability to apply the techniques or the methodology, because I won't even say technique, because we have 6 stabs. That's as far as techniques as we teach, inside Medusa. But the methodology provided the people train it with integrity and they're not blowing smoke up their own asses, they have to. This is why we're hesitant to form study groups without instructors, because if they're not training in a way that the material is going to allow them to absorb it, if they're not working hard, if they're not hitting each other, not beating each other up, but if they're not making that content, if they're not making that contact, if they're not shaking the shit out of each other, they may as well be playing, tappy games. That's not Medusa. Mike upstate has had guys quit because they're too rough. He's not beating his guys up, but these people don't want to train in realistic manners. You look at the old war films, these guys are throwing each other onto, wooden stages, compacted dirt. They're going at it. And people want dojo life. They don't want to, it's a very unique subculture that we're in. It's not everybody who wants to beat each other up and, grab a beer afterwards.
That's a fair statement. I guess what I would say is that there possibly just needs to be an inoculation process. If you see people that are already training in a rough and tumble art, whether it's something like catch can or scientific wrestling or even varsity wrestling or old school jiu-jitsu was good. A lot of it's turned into a lot of buggy chokes and kind of romancing the stone. Softer ways that we just kind of looks a lot more like two-person kata in the training environment. But if somebody's already kind of coming from a rough and tumble background, I'm sure they would adapt to Medusa pretty quickly from what you're saying.
Definitely.
From a marketing standpoint, I guess what it is continuing to have a product to sell in the terms of getting people coming back. From a practitioner standpoint, and not necessarily a monetary one, but a practical one, is with arts that take longer to learn, it keeps people training, right? Yeah. When there's more than 50 sets to learn and know and be able to do, it keeps people training, it keeps people developing, and staves off boredom.
Right.
And having taught, at a gym and taught combatives, there was, over the course of 4 or 5 years, having conversations with my senior students as far as, right, and some of them became instructors, as far as do we change what we're doing, because the philosophy we had is the first 6 months to a year needs to be focused on how to bang. Once you can bang, we can teach you the art. But a lot of people just learned to bang and then they left. So it's like, from a keeping people coming back, keeping people training, keeping them smoothing out their system and, making a lifelong pursuit, do we slow down how quickly we bring them up to speed? Do we dilute it just to keep them there and coming back? So what keeps someone training in Medusa?
The people we've gotten so far are really high-level, individuals.
Well, guys like Blackgrave's been doing stuff since at least the early 2000s.
Yeah. The fact that he came to us and said, hey, I want into what you're doing, that's what told us we're on the right track.
He tends to be an early adopter.
Yeah. But, we're all employed. None of us do this for a living. I have a day job that pays me relatively well. Mike works. So none of us are in this for the money. If somebody wants to learn Medusa from me for a month and then go on and do their own thing, that's fine. I'm not making bank on this. I sell the manual for a couple of bucks, and that's all I really care about. I gave it away forever, but nobody wanted it. Nobody, you charge somebody for something, and then people start paying for it. They start buying it. And the only reason I charged for it is because I wanted people to read it. I wanted them to have some sort of investment to read it. I give it away. It just sits in somebody's file. They're not going to look at it. They pay for it. They're going to read it. But outside of that, like, I don't even like taking money for lessons. I have essentially, with the exception of a handful of people, I've taught for free my entire adulthood. So having people stick around, if they want to stick around and join, the Blood Hill Combat Club and murder board things and workshop things with me, I'm all for it. But, if they want to come learn what they got to learn and be on their way and they feel confident, that's fine with me. If they feel confident, I did my job.
So, what is it? Pardon me. So, if it's just going to be a shoving match in which one of our yarmulkes is going to get knocked off, what other options within Medusa exist besides spilling somebody all over the ground? Because it's one of my issues with a lot of knife systems, whether it's FMA. I find Filipino martial arts, generally speaking, there's exceptions, and those exceptions are typically amongst people and not amongst styles. I find Filipino martial arts, whether it's Pangamut or Panantukan, to honestly be terrible when it comes to empty-handed. I've trained in a bunch of different variations of it. They lack any power to be effective, and the majority of Filipinos I know that are any good empty-handed, it's typically because they boxed, right? Boxing, basketball, and the Bible. That's what's important in the Philippines.
Yep.
So what is it that is in Medusa that allows us to look at an empty hand option, not just falling into the trap of every problem may not require a knife, but it's going to use a knife to solve it.
Right. So we stress that whenever we teach, we stress the fact that, I mentioned it earlier, if we can stop the altercation at shock, that's where we're going to stop it. I teach my students empty hand. Other people may not. They might not have the capabilities to teach their students empty hand. Should they? Yes. But I teach my students how to end the situation, quickly, without having to stab somebody if that's what it requires. I don't want people to get stabbed. I don't want somebody to die because of a bad decision that they made.
So there isn't anything that's codified within the Medusa curriculum for empty hand as of yet.
No, Mike is working on an empty hand system that follows the same types of principles as Medusa, but I am not privy to any of that information as of yet.
Okay. How big is little Mike anyway?
Mike's taller than me, I think. I think he's 6'8".
So we have a guy that's 6'8", 6'7", and the kid's 7 foot?
7 foot, yep.
7 foot. So, hang on, 100% on, yeah, unfortunately. Now, if you add a few tricks to the from FMA into boxing, all of a sudden it starts looking great, and that's when you wind up with Manny Pacquiao. So when we're looking at empty hand options, I mean, you talked earlier about relying on the attributes that speak to you. So you have definitely height and mass on your size. So when it comes to a skinny little fruit like me, are we going to look at, from an empty hand standpoint, what going through and relying on that size and just trying to steamroll them?
No.
Because with a knife, you can get away with the minimum effective dose as far as energy required to go through and tickle someone's organs when we're hiding the pickle isn't much. No. When we're looking at steamrolling somebody with physicality, it requires a lot more. So then do we not require more footwork, more maneuvering, etc.?
I wouldn't say more footwork beyond knowing how to flank your target. I have a student who's I want to say he's 4 feet tall, but he's really like 5'5", 5'6", I think. And he
That
knows,
would be like 4 feet tall for
yeah,
you. Yeah, that would be.
but his, he knows his attributes. Yeah, he's a martial artist, but he knows his attributes. So he knows he's not going to attack the target the same way I am. He goes low line. Low line kicks. He'll, go, shoot to the groin, shoot in for a single leg, and then go for the femoral. Where I wouldn't do that. I could teach somebody smaller than me to do that, but that wouldn't be something that I would necessarily do. As an instructor, we have to keep our minds open for other people's body types. I can't teach everybody to be like me. And that's one of the things we stress with Medusa when we bring instructors on. I don't want to teach somebody to stab the way that I stab. Mike Blackgrave, who we mentioned earlier, phenomenal background, phenomenal martial artist, a phenomenal combatives practitioner. His Medusa looks nothing like my Medusa. My Medusa looks nothing like Brian Canada's Medusa. It looks nothing like Shadow's Medusa. We all have different experiences, different influences, and it's going to change the way that we relay our expression of the methodology. So we have to, with that type of flexibility, we have to, we have to keep in mind, we don't want the student to look like us. They're not going to mimic us. It's not like being in a karate dojo. It's not like being in Taekwondo where everybody's in lines throwing the same fucking kick for 10 times. I come in with a hook thrust. My hook thrust is going to look different than your hook thrust. You're going to throw it at...
Talking like an Apache style stab? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm sorry, an Apache style stab?
An Apache stab where it comes around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. It's going to be different. You might be tighter. I might be, I might go out a little bit longer. I might come from a different angle. It's all about the now. Like I said earlier, it's about being able to do what's necessary at the moment. So I want to be able to provide my students with the ability, with the tools to succeed. I will teach somebody smaller than me how to, get in underneath somebody's reach, how to lower their center of gravity to take them down.
So if I understand correctly, it's a collection of concepts, right? Yeah. It is Medusa if you are initiating with some type of shock and or awe.
Yep.
It could be going through and just driving a hard shock to their sternum or breastplate to create some type of what's going on, or hitting with a strobe from a flashlight like your Claris XT2C. Yep. And then you are creating a point of attachment. I'm assuming that you favor some type of collar tie. Is it generally a collar tie?
For me, it's generally a collar tie or an underhook.
Okay.
Again, because of my size, I can manhandle somebody from those positions. A crossbody arm drag, I can pull somebody off their feet and get around their back. But yeah, it's shocking.
Because I grew up in El Sombrero de los Estados Unidos, the hat of the United States, and I'm supposed to hockey. I can go through and create that shock and grab onto somebody's right sleeve somewhere above the elbow and turn into a hockey fight. And I can have that be my latch. That can be my attachment point. Yep. And then the third one in your triangle is
stab. That's when we go to stab. If we can shock and latch and end there, we end there. If it gets to stab, punches and bunches. We stab until the threat is neutralized. We know we're going to go to jail. We accept that. It's, you stab somebody, you're going to jail regardless. And that's if you're training an edged weapon system, you need to come to that reality. You need to come to that realization and accept that it's a possibility. Because if you do have to use the stuff, there are going to be repercussions. Yeah, and then you have to think if it's worth it. You know, there are only a few things worth me risking my life for. Yeah.
I guess it's important to close your eyes and have that conversation with yourself or God or whoever it is you talk to, and determine what your personal use of force is, right? What your go-no is. But if you've kind of created that shock, you've created that attachment point, and you decide that you're just going to finish it up with some overhand rights and variations of this with a fist, or, we called it a man slap, where you're actually just slapping with the heel of the palm, going through and shaking the shit out of them to unbalance them, right? Taking that to a point where you step on their foot and push them so they break their ankle. That's still Medusa. Yeah?
Yeah. If you go out unarmed and you get into a physical altercation, you can still shock latch and then hammer fist. You know, just cycle that hammer fist until he's on the ground. You know, do what you got to do to end the situation. You know, Medusa's easily adaptable to being unarmed. You know, it could be, we were talking about this the other night. It could be shock latch stab, shock latch snap, shock latch shoot. It could be, maintaining those three principles, shock latch, and then whatever your end game is what's going to get you home.
Yeah, so somebody had a good judo background or some type of dirty wrestling or something like that. I mean, you can shock, you can latch, shake the shit out of them, and just do some type of trip or foot sweep, and then make your thing work. You can go through, and your stab can be whatever it is you want. It can be a choose your own adventure that way.
It can be, yeah.
I had a chance to read the Medusa manual, and thank you for sending that over. For anyone that's wondering, my synopsis of it is, if I had a few hours to teach somebody that I care about that knew very little, like my kid sister or something like that, is going to go find herself in Thailand, or one of the various girls I've trained to go do mission work over in some third world shithole. The stuff that's in that Medusa manual, that's what I would show them. Having had a chance to actually see it, having had a chance to train people that I'm sending into those environments, that's what was in the Medusa manual. And I thought, having chats with you after, that was in fact your goal. You guys nailed it.
Thank you.
Going through and actually having a chance to chat with you and kind of clear a few things up. So you are using some combinations. They're just regional combinations, right? Varying your height and your target. And you do have, it sounds like you do have drills. You have just not, I do this, you do this, I do this, you do this. But there's a lot of would it be fair to say you're doing a lot of tussling, or the equivalent like pummeling drills? So you're getting used to shaking the shit out of somebody and kind of going through and kind of, working that, right, getting over your rough and 2-on-1 so you can go through and skin whatever it is you need to. You are doing some of that rough and tumble work, right?
Yeah, you could definitely say we're milling, definitely.
You describe it as milling, okay?
Yeah, I do personally, yeah.
Sure. A very English term.
Yeah.
So what is it about Medusa that sucks? It's the question I ask everyone. What about what you do sucks? Or what is it that your detractors commonly say? Sorry, go ahead.
All right, so what our detractors commonly say? That we are a Libre and Piper ripoff. Which, anybody who's seen Medusa, we're a completely different animal. It's, pointy end goes in the other guy. That's the similarity. They're three unique systems, and that's the second thing. That's the first thing that sucks about Medusa. Sorry, Mike, you should have called it the Medusa method.
Alliteration cells, yeah.
Yep. Medusa edge weapon system is great. I love it. Medusa method. The second thing, I'm a technique collector. I got fucking shelves and shelves of martial arts manuals behind me that probably have the same six.
That's all you have in your collection? Oh, bro, we gotta compare collections sometime.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, it's like, they got the same six moves in them. But I've got everything from Kelly McCann to Applegate to Barry Drennan. I'm a technique
Classics.
collector at heart. I'm a technique collector. I try not to carry that over into my training. That's the one thing, my technique collector self wishes Medusa had the techniques, but I understand why we don't have them. So it's a necessary evil to me. I would love to fill up Medusa with a whole bunch of cool techniques, but that's not the mission.
Make it just like the rest.
Right.
So do you make a distinction between tools and techniques?
No, I think the terms are interchangeable.
Okay. When I would teach women's self-defense courses, and I predominantly taught them unarmed, I would teach a few different ways to do damage. Typically, most women just find what we call a freight train knee, which you guys talk about latching. Once the point of attachment is created, they basically grab a hold and slingshot themselves in with driving off the rear foot, stepping forward with the front foot, and the knee connects, and we try to ideally blow again. You hit the front 2/3 of the leg, ideally from the inside out, and we would like to go above the knee so that we can do some type of damage to the ligament. That's the tool. There's a technique for using it,
right,
but that's the tool. And then everything else that we do, there's some basic footwork and stuff like that so that they don't get steamrolled and somebody goes to push into them. So they bleed that off. They're stepping and pivoting, and it continuing to pull that person onto that same leg and just continue to get after it like it owes them money. Everything else is just geared towards them getting to a position where they can use that tool. So would we call a hook stab a technique or a tool? Would we call that stepping on somebody's foot and pushing them? Would we call it a tool or a technique? Because, does it matter how you step on that person's foot, or just that you stepped on their foot and pushed them?
Yeah, just that you step on their foot and push them. Very simple. The less thinking about it, the better.
Sure. So would we consider them techniques or tools when we're looking at something that's that fundamental? I don't want to say fundamental, but it's fundamental to me because I'm kind of a dirty prick.
So a hook, I would call a hook stab, like a hook thrust, would be a technique because you're utilizing a tool. A knee or a foot stomp, I would call a tool because you're utilizing your body weapon.
So you make a distinction between whether you are using an implement or not.
Right.
Okay. Within Medusa, are you using any impact stuff? Whether it's, brass knuckles obviously can be inserted. Are we looking at the use of small cautious or saps or anything like that?
They could easily be adapted to Medusa. Easily. There's no reason to have a secondary curriculum for impact weapons. Instead of it being 3 stabs, you have 2 angles for a blackjack or a sap, and then you're utilizing the edges. If you want to calm the guy down, you use the flat side. If you want to really cause damage, you use the thin side. But there's no need, to reinvent things. Everything's already out there if you look for it, So if somebody had a sap or a blackjack or a kosh or a dan bong or an FMA stick, a rattan stick, they could utilize the methodologies inside Medusa, and it would still be functional.
Your first two parts are going to be more or less the same, yeah?
Yeah.
So if you're going through and using a small impact weapon, so something, i.e., less than approximately around the 12 inches mark, usually a bit smaller, it's going to be more or less the same. You're going to look at still creating that shock, and whether that's with the cross check because it's already out, whatever that looks like, you're going to create your point of attack and shake the shit out of them and blast them with your favorite power strikes. Correct?
Yeah. Right. And if we're
Awesome.
using something like an impact weapon, we're going to teach them how to generate power from an enclosed space. Teach them how to work the kinetic chain from the feet up to the hips to the shoulders. So they're not working just from the arm strikes. We're going to want to give them those tools so they're successful.
Yeah, definitely when you're using impact. So I myself favor impact options. I think that edge weapons, whether they're point driven or edge driven options, the old carrying a straight razor or even a sharpened screwdriver, stuff like that, I find that they are typically permanent solutions to temporary problems, with the caveat being that they don't solve the problem fast enough. Where my experience with impact, and I mean, one of the guys that I got a chance to work with, he had one trick. His right hand was like the hammer of Thor. And from variations of this all the way down to kind of bolo uppercut, he would grab a hold of a guy and typically boom. I watched a guy pull a knife on him one time. The guy swiped at him, he went, whoa, and when he hit somebody, the guy didn't stumble and fall down. His legs just went, and he piled in a way at which, when you watched it, you were concerned about the guy's knees more than anything else. And so going through and seeing, and I mean, obviously seeing people get hit with a variety of small impact weapons, whether it's ball peen hammers and stuff like that, I find that impact has a lot more sudden of an effect. And so I myself advocate for small impact weapons or small impact options because I find that they solve the problem faster and typically don't solve it in a permanent way. I mean, you dome someone with a 16-ounce hammer, it's probably not going to be good for them in a long-term way, but there isn't anywhere on your body that if I asked you where you would like to be hit with a hammer, like you get to pick where I'm going to hit you as hard as I can, that you're going to be okay with any of them. Where, if you give someone the option as far as like, okay, you're going to get stabbed or cut, where would you like to do it if you have a choice? Then like, oh, well, I think I'll take it, right? Yeah. Where you don't see that with an impact option. So for me, for myself, I lean more towards impact options, but with the caveat being, I know how to generate power. I know how to hit hard.
So I love impact weapons. The legality in my area, it is, I would get in no trouble for carrying a knife. If I were to carry a dambong or a collapsible baton or
what is a dambong?
Dambong is a Korean short stick about 8 inches, 10 inches long. It's used to break bones.
Is that like a yawara?
Longer than a yawara.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So it's like a big kubaton? Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And they're made of like a mahogany, or they're made of a steel, or what are they made of?
Yeah, generally a hardwood, or now they're making them out of, impact plastics.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. But, if I'm caught out in the street with an impact weapon, I'm facing some sort of retribution. If I'm caught out with a knife, there's no problem with me having a knife. I've talked to police officers when I've had knives on me. They ask if you have a weapon, you tell them you have a knife. That's the end of the story. If I were to tell them, oh yeah, I got an expandable baton or a collapsible baton in my back pocket, I'm in cuffs in the back of their car. It is, Terry Trahan always says it's easier to shut off the computer than to drain the pipes. And I agree with that 100%. It's just, sadly, it's not my reality at the moment. If I could carry, if I could carry the SAT with me out in the street, I would much rather carry that than a knife any day. I don't want to carry a knife. You know, it's like you said, knives are a permanent solution to a temporary problem. But if that's all you can have, I'd rather have that than nothing. You know.
That's accurate. Yeah. Excellent. Where is it that somebody can find the Medusa manual?
So my buddy Cash has agreed to sell it through his Revenant Core website,
Okay,
REVANANTCORPS.com.
I'll get you to send me the link to that, and then we'll
Okay.
put that up in the thing. But do you also have a link to that on your IG page?
Yeah, it's in my link tree in my bio.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, for anyone that's just getting in, I got a chance to go through that manual. If you want a crash course in what you would teach a loved one if they're going on harm's way in a few hours, it's definitely well done. We're getting ready to close this out. Is there anything that you would like to add? Revenant Corp is the guy's name.
Yeah.
He's a grappler himself. I think he's a BJJ black belt, and he's doing some G10 pointy goodness, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Am I thinking of that fella?
Excellent product.
Yeah. I got to see some of his first stuff when it first popped up, and there is a marked difference between the way that it's the execution of it and stuff like that. It's really stepped up. You can get everything from goon tape handles to I think he's doing the full jab wraps and stuff like that now.
Yeah.
Whatever to call a jab wrap these days, I don't know. Is there anything about Medusa that you think is grossly misunderstood or misrepresented by people that don't know that you would like to add?
Yeah, we're not a knife cult. Medusa is a prison-based system, but you will never see any of us pretending to be, from that world. We're not thugs. We're not animals. We're not criminals. We're people. We're fathers. We're husbands. We're sons. We're just people living our lives, wanting to teach people how to survive. We're not playing dress up. We're out here doing this because we care about people. We're not about collecting patches and knives and all the cool guy shit. We just want to get out there and do our thing.
What 3 books do you recommend people read? If someone asked you for some book recommendations, what 3 to 5, I guess, do you throw out there?
Sure. So, Kelly McCann's Combatives for Street Survival is number 1. Shella by Andrew Vox.
Shella?
Shella, yeah.
Okay.
How to Kill a Mockingbird, my favorite book. I love that book.
You said To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Excellent. A little bit of Atticus Finch.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, those 3.
If you could go back in time and give some advice to your younger self, what would it be? What would you go back and tell 18-year-old you? It doesn't need to be related to martial arts.
Yeah, no,
What's
just
that?
to take the next couple of years more seriously.
Excellent. Is there any quick questions that you guys have for Jason in the chat?
I'm pretty transparent, so if there's anything you want to know. First book was Kelly McCann's Combatives for Street Survival. You can find it pretty cheap on Amazon.
Any of the Jim Grover stuff, the Combatives 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
any of his combative stuff, any of his videos, excellent stuff.
Sure.
I've been in that game it's been a minute. It's well over 20 years. And when I go through his stuff, I still learn a thing or two.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've been at this a while. To find out that you're learning something new.
Yep.
I mean, each one of those things I learned at this point is worth a couple $100, right? So,
Really quick, before we wrap up, I actually want to talk about Kelly. This is something I haven't talked about on any interview previously, but I cleared it with him. So 2 years ago, I was ready to walk away from teaching completely. I was fed up with the politics and all the garbage in the community, people topping egos and just drama and garbage. I went to see Kelly with my friend Maury Abreu at his Hindsight 2020 tour when it was postponed we had it in 2021. And Kelly pulled me outside during a smoke break. And he let me know that he'd been watching me on Facebook. And he'd known some of the shit I was going through, just wanting to leave combatives. And he essentially told me, fuck those guys. You're a banger. Hang your shingle and just do your fucking thing. And Kelly's the main reason I'm still doing this. He's really stepped up. He's a good friend. He's a mentor. And if it wasn't for him and Mike, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah, there's that old adage, right? How many people does it take to, how many martial arts does it take to change a light bulb?
Mm-hmm.
1, and 20 to sit around and talk about whether he's qualified.
Exactly.
Right. So, that's pretty sage advice from the old man, right? Just do it.
Just do it.
And if someone's got a problem with it, unless they're showing up, it doesn't really matter. And if they show up, they'll find out that you probably know what you're doing anyway.
Right.
So
nobody showed up yet. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. I really appreciate it, Jason.
Thank you.
For anyone that's watching, if you came into this late, I'll go through and pull this down. I'll download it, I'll edit it, and then I'll post it up on YouTube so that it's easy for you guys to listen to or watch. And then any of the links and stuff like that we discussed, we'll go through and put those in the show notes. And that way you can listen to it while you're driving, because honestly, trying to watch interviews going back on Instagram is kind of a pain in the ass. So we'll make sure that happens. Thanks everyone that showed up, and Jason, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you guys for listening.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.